Rub hemp makes 20 barrels of oil. No need for pesticides to poison all our soil. People got no food, they got no clothes, they got no rest. Right now it's time for hemp.
Thank you for taking time for Hemp. I am your host, Casper Leitch. It is Monday, Healthy Mondays on the big broadcast. And I want to thank you for tuning in on Healthy Mondays. We put a spotlight on Patients at a Time, an amazing group of people who are dedicated to helping patients who are getting limited on time here on the planet to organize their world and have the best days that they possibly can until they have no more time. With that said, I'm going to pass this joint conversation over to my joint host today. And I want to remind you to please go to their websites. They've got great information that you can not only download and share with your friends, but you can also use for accreditation if you are in the medical field, and I'm sure they'll share that with you as well. Mary Lynn and Al, happy Monday.
Happy Monday, Casper. As always, it's a pleasure to be here on Healthy Mondays. Of course, Mary Lynn, Mathre, and Al Byrne are here to represent our organization, our nonprofit called Patients Out of Time. You can find our information at medicalcannabis.com or patientsoutofTime.org. Patients Out of Time is a 20-year-old plus nonprofit whose mission has been and is the education of the U.S. public, and especially the healthcare professionals of the United States, about the therapeutic value of cannabis and the necessity of understanding how cannabis interfaces with the endocannabinoid system. Our main focus of education is done through accredited conferences, and our 10th series in that conference will occur next April in Baltimore, Maryland, and details are available at medicalcannabis.com, patientsoutofTime.org, etc. But these are accredited conferences, meaning that doctors, nurses, pharmacists, etc., in attendance can receive continuing medical education credits for their attendance for a small extra fee. But this is state-of-the-art science. The speakers that come to these conferences, the faculty, if you will, come from all over the globe. In the coming up conference, of course, we will have researchers from the United States and Canada, but we'll have the folks there from Scotland, from Great Britain, meaning England. We'll have folks there from Portugal and Spain. They'll be coming from everywhere, and what they bring to that one location in Baltimore, Maryland next April is a state of the art of cannabis science worldwide. Keep in mind that there is a lot of world out there besides the United States, and in that world there has been a great deal of science conducted. Right now there are 27 countries in the world where medical cannabis is used daily by their physicians and nurses, including such backward places as Spain and Canada and Australia and places like this. So what we're going to talk about today, though, since we're very close to Veterans Day, and since everybody in attendance here are veterans, we're going to talk about a weekend that the four of us all enjoyed here this past weekend in early November in Charlottesville, Virginia, when Charlottesville was visited by the Cannonball Run, which is this is the second time this has occurred. These folks, veterans, and the sponsor, which is a company called Magical Butter, look that up, magicalbutter.com, great tool there. But they sponsored the run. They left in LA a couple of weeks ago. They've been in Denver. They've been in Utah. They've been in Arizona and New Mexico, North Carolina, and other places. And they ended up in Charlottesville. They're on their way to, as we speak right now, to Washington, D.C. for Veterans Day. And these folks are promoting as they go through educational efforts the notion that 22 suicides a day for our veterans returning from especially the more recent wars, but this number includes veterans from Korea, Vietnam, every war we've ever been in includes the 22. 22 a day die by suicide, by their own hand. That's unacceptable. And we as veterans believe that part of the problem is, if not a large part of the problem, is that the government just simply prescribes too many pharmaceuticals, too many opiates, some of these in such quantities that they're just overwhelming. And we also know through thousands and thousands and thousands of our brothers and sisters saying so, and believe me, we believe our brothers and sisters when they tell us face to face these things, that by replacing all those pharmaceuticals and opiates with cannabis, their life is improved, their family life, their health, their attitude, everything's better. So the idea of the Cannonball Run is to spread that message across the country and to end up in D.C. and demand, as veterans, that we be allowed to use cannabis. We believe we've earned that right, and we believe we have that right no matter where we live in the United States, whether it's a legal state or a non-legal state. We're veterans. We support the country should support us. So a part of the weekend was a movie called The Scientist. Anybody listening to this show worldwide, I want you to watch this 1-hour documentary. It's about Dr. Raphael Mechoulam, PhD, of Jerusalem, Israel, and it's a biography, in a sense, of his life as a scientist, researching the plant cannabis. He was the first folk to isolate the compounds of cannabis, and his lab in Jerusalem has, since the mid-60s, been continuously looking at this subject matter. So The Scientist was produced by Jake Klein. It's easily found at the website is thescientist.com. That's the name of the documentary, The Scientist. It's one of the best spent hours you'll spend to see the importance not only of Dr. Mechoulam, but the work that he's done, and to help him answer and us answer a couple of questions he asked during the documentary, which were essentially, with all these wonderful discoveries that we've pointed out to the world, why has nothing happened to make sure that these discoveries are implemented into the healthcare of the human population? Two excellent questions by a man certainly qualified to ask them. So anyway, The Scientist, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about what Dr. Mechoulam talked about during his hour on screen. And basically the show is divided up into 7 areas. And I'm going to start with what Dr. Mechoulam thought was the most important area that he discussed, which was bone growth. With me today, Nick and Bob and Mary Lynn, and Bob and Al are in that category of, are we losing our bone strength, our bone mass? Yes, we are. And what Dr. Mechoulam assured us is that the use of cannabis was not going to do any harm to our structure, our skeletal structure. And keep in mind, the endocannabinoid system has receptors in our skeletal system, right? It has receptors everywhere, including our skeletons. So it is perfectly logical then to assume that the receptors in the skeletal system that we all have, where there are receptors to accept cannabis compounds, are doing so. And in doing so, are maintaining our bones in very good shape. We're not losing a lot of density and strength, and we're not becoming brittle if we use cannabis daily. And he emphasized, of course, with the aging population, not only of our country, but of the world, because people are simply living longer, paying attention to our bones is something we really need to do. Now, again, we had the privilege of having Dr. Mechoulam speak at one of our conferences 4 years ago, I believe, if my recollection correct, and Marilyn's not here to correct me, but I believe it was 4 years ago where he made a presentation at the conference where he spoke to this issue, where he thought that bone damage, especially among Asian women, could be successfully halted, reversed even, with the use of cannabis as opposed to the pharmaceutical drugs which are available to these women now, which essentially work for a while and then after a point of time fail completely. So that was his most important area of the film. I thought one of the things that was, I'm going to let these guys talk if they want, but just to get Bob in here. Bob Jordan is a Vietnam vet, a longtime friend of mine and his wife Kathy, and I'm going to let him tell you about Kathy. But one of the things that was very much on the mind of Dr. Meshulam was the treatment of what we know as ALS or Lou Gehrig's disease. And I'll let Bob tell you a little bit about himself and about his wife, who unfortunately does have ALS. Just any place right here, Bob.
Yeah, Kathy's had ALS since 1986, and she smoked cannabis as a younger person, and then after the diagnosis of ALS, the doctor told her to not smoke anything at all because you need all the lung capacity for end of life. You get 3 to 5 years diagnosis. 5 years is long. Now this is 86, and she went to Florida and smoked the form of cannabis called Mathre Gold. It was very popular at the time back in '90, and her disease stopped. And when she told me this, I didn't believe her. I was being a good husband, figuring she's healthy, and if that's what she needs to use to deal with this, then okay. But what happened was, she actually started getting better, and they said, "Well, wait a minute. She used cannabis before, and it didn't show anything." But I think the thing of it was, we never had that strain of that particular strain of cannabis, and she started getting better, and she's still with us today, almost 30 years later, and she uses cannabis daily. And the thing of it is, some people ask me how it works. Well, that's up to the scientists. What I can tell you as a fact is when she has it, she's better. If we don't have it, she starts getting sick. It's keeping the progress of the disease at bay. And so I just make sure she has it. And now Michelle was talking about it in his film, ALS, and they're studying, more open to studying Israel than they are in this country, which I think is a shame.
Yeah, Israel is way, way ahead of us in the ability to have an open mind on this subject. And I think part of it, well, all of it is probably due to Professor Meshulam, because he has just led the world in this. I mean, you're going to see this movie. People are interviewed all over the globe. Smart people, all PhDs and MDs, and people that have been working on science for their lives, dedicated to this. And every one of them bow to him. He's the man. I had the privilege once in 1996, again at another, 1990, no, it couldn't have been that now. 2004, I get confused sometimes. It's a long time we've been doing this. But in 2004, Patients at a Time put on a conference in Charlottesville, Virginia, and our sponsors were the University of Virginia's medical school, the nursing school, and their law school. And of course, we had the Virginia Nurses Association was part of the sponsorship. Dr. Meshulam spoke, and I was the moderator of that conference. I've been the moderator of them all, and it came time for me to introduce Professor Meshulam, and I gave the audience a background, synopsis of who he was, and then I don't know why, but I looked at him and I wanted to say something complimentary, and I said, so I'm going to introduce you to Professor Meshulam, who is the grandfather of the medical cannabis area, and that stuck. We now think of him as the grandfather of this whole movement. And I did go to him privately after the conference, he and his wife, and said, gee, I hope I didn't say something wrong. And he said, oh, no. He says, I'm a grandfather. I like being a grandfather, and that's okay. And actually that was brought up in the movie. So I'd just like to go on record that I guess I named Professor Meshulam the grandfather. But in talking about grandfathering, he talked about kids, right, Bob? I mean, he was in there and he was saying he actually had an experiment going, a clinical study going in Israel, run by he and colleagues, where they were giving a concentrated cannabis product. I'm not sure exactly what it was. By drop, so it sounded like an oil or something, and I think it was in like olive oil, wasn't it? It was in olive oil, yeah. And it dropped under the tongue of an infant under 1 year old. And what they found was incredible improvement in this little baby's life.
Epilepsy.
Epilepsy. Okay, that's what it was.
Yeah.
And no negative and no psychoactive activity. The THC compound that was given to this little infant was there. It was THC in the product, but it was of such an insignificant percentage that the child had no psychoactive activity, and the epilepsy was stopped. So, there's another a bullet place we talk about. Kathy having ALS for essentially diagnosed for 30 years, Bob. Diagnosed. And again, if you listen to what Bob said, a long-term prognosis of life for that is 5 years. Kathy has outlived at least 3 of her doctors. Has she?
Yeah, outlived her doctors, yeah.
Yeah, and Kathy's not out playing racquetball, but she does very well. She gets around. She is very, very alert. And in Florida, one of the most important medical cannabis bills being circulated, if you will, is the Kathy Jordan medical cannabis bill. How's that going to go down there?
Well, no, that was
past history.
That was past history. That didn't go anywhere. But the day that I'm not a conspiracy person, but the day that was released, our house got raided.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's another story.
Another story there. Yeah. But no, right now in Florida we have 3. We have United for Care doing medical. Regulate Florida is doing a legalization, and Floridians for Freedom is doing one, and one for Floridians for Freedom is one. It's like a half a paragraph. It states that nobody over the age of 21 can be arrested for the possession, cultivation, or use of cannabis, period. We found out through experience, when you put all the stuff in the Constitution, every word that you use, they use against you when they fight you. So the less words you use and right to the point, then you have a possibility of getting something done. So it's an exciting time for us. Like Al said, we ain't getting no younger, but from where we were to where we are today is amazing, but we're not done yet.
Well, it's also amazing when you think about what we just talked about in The Scientist. And again, you can find that online, folks, at thescientist.com. But I mean, we've just gone from bone aging conversation to talking about a child under 1 year old, and how there is a positive effect at both ends of life, and that's pretty amazing when you think about it just in those terms. One of the other things that we talked about, besides the ALS, which of course has some relationship over to multiple sclerosis, to Parkinson's disease, there's a lot of connected dots there between those nerve disorders and probably an inefficient or poorly working cannabis program. But one thing I thought is an interesting story for the folks, Bob, is to go back to Kathy finding a particular strain in Florida, and because we've talked a lot about that with experts on the line here, and it's becoming more and more important that as each patient has a different physiological setup, strains are going to be, and understanding how they work on different areas of the body and people, that's going to be more important. Tell the folks what the background story is on that particular strain of cannabis.
Well, it's sometimes truth is stranger than fiction. Kathy came down to Florida, and it was a Mayaca Gold. And like I said, the doctor told her not to use anything because you need everything. They said, "What's it going to do? Kill me?" So she smoked it. Make a long story short, the gentleman in Florida that grew it, his name was Donnie Clark, and he's from a little town called Mayaca, and they called it Mayaca Gold. And he got life in prison for growing this particular strain, and she got life for using it. She got life to live, and he got life in prison. Clinton gave him a commuted sentence, didn't pardon him. So we're real good friends with this gentleman today, and we call him the odd couple. Kathy got life because she smoked this form of cannabis. She does not have a feeding tube. She does not have a respirator. We think she's the longest living patient without any of those devices. So this cannabis that she smoked, and we say maybe it was something in the soil, maybe it was something in that strain, but whatever it was, it clicked with her. And she'll tell you that she felt her disease stop that day. She said there was like a low-grade hum in her body, and when she smoked that cannabis, that particular strain of cannabis stopped her disease. And when we found out going forward through the years that we've experimented, we came out with Power Plant Plus now, to 50-50 sativa and indica, and that seems to keep it at bay. And if what would normally happen in weeks or months is taking years, 5 years for something, so there's something here. All we've been doing through the years, all she's been doing through the years is saying, hey, look, will somebody please pay attention? And then in Michelle's film, The Scientist, they did talk about ALS. There's something there that needs to be looked at. And that's education is the key.
Yeah, and that's the thing. People say, well, we need more research. A lot of the anti-people, we need more research to go forward. Well, I don't think anybody in this room with me is going to deny we want more research. Bob does, Marilyn. We all want more research. But we also have a research library right now, worldwide, that is way sufficient to understand that this cannabis plant is able to produce some wonderful therapeutic effects and is totally non-toxic. So we've arrived for its clinical use. Does that mean that we're done looking at it and see more clinical uses? No, we want more research. But what we need now is to recognize our sponsors. And so we're going to break for just a few minutes, and we'll be back with Nick and Bob and Marilyn and Al in just a few minutes.
You are listening to the Time for Hemp Global Broadcasting Network. The only broadcasting network dedicated to ending the global war on drugs on iHeartRadio. Please share us with your friends.
THCF Medical Clinics are the premier physicians clinic in the United States. THCF has offices all across the United States from Hawaii to Michigan. THCF Medical Clinics has helped approximately 150,000 patients obtain their medical marijuana permits to legally possess, grow, and use medical marijuana. If you have chronic pain, multiple sclerosis, or any other neurological degenerative disease, or if you have any gastrointestinal disorders such as GERD, irritable bowel syndrome, or if you have AIDS, cancer, spastic disorders, seizure disorders, or glaucoma, call us at 1-800-723-0188 or visit us online at hemp.org. Again, the number is 1-800-723-0188 and the site is hemp.org.
boogie with you.
Yeah, baby, I did. I packed this bowl for two, and since you're not here, I'm going to smoke it without you. How's that? That works for me. It is Monday. Happy Monday. I'm going to remind you that we are a global broadcasting network, no longer just one program, but now we have about 20 hosts on the global broadcasting network that are dedicated to ending prohibition all around the world. You can find us on iHeartRadio, Tumblr, SoundCloud, iTunes, Google+, and we're on Roku TV as well. And like a good joint, we are best when shared with friends. It is Monday, Healthy Mondays, putting a spotlight on all the amazing people at Patients at a Time. If you are in the field of medicine, you can also get accreditation by going to their website and checking out their programs there. They've also got other information that you can share with your friends, great content about the need to utilize cannabis for making our bodies, minds, and spirits healthy. With that said, I'm passing this joint chat back over to my joint host here on the Big Joint Broadcast on Time for Hemp.
Thank you, Casper. This is Al Byrne back with Lynn, Mathre, and my guests Bob and Nick to discuss various issues today about the therapeutic use of cannabis. We were talking about the scientist. One of the discussions that we had with Dr. Meshulam, a private conversation with him by Skype, was about post-traumatic stress and TBI. I think listeners to this show worldwide understand that I have been diagnosed with post-traumatic stress and that I use cannabis successfully to help me with that particular condition. And I know of tens of thousands of other vets like myself that do as well. But that's my story. We're going to bring in Bob and I are Vietnam vets, and Mary Lynn is a Vietnam-era nurse. But Nick is another generation. He's still a warrior. He was in Afghanistan, and he served in the Marine Corps. And Nick is new to the program, but Nick, just a little bit background about you, where you come from, how'd you get in the Marines anyway, and then if you could move on to today, because Nick is here with us, and he has with him a service dog, and that's a very, very dear subject to me and a lot of guys. And we'll talk about some dogs too. How about that, Nick?
Certainly. Thank you for having me today.
Oh, no problem. Glad to.
Well, long story short, I was born and raised in Kissimmee, Florida. I moved to the mountains of North Carolina right after high school, where a woman who broke my heart led me into the Marine Corps right after the war started. In March of 2003, I did the delayed entry program in May and moved back down to Florida to spend some time with my family before I went to Parris Island, South Carolina. And then shortly thereafter, I got to deploy, and it was just a whole new mindset to me after war. It was just, I had an alcohol dependency that probably ruined my marriage and, inevitably led to the end of my Marine Corps career, which was ultimately the best thing that has happened in my life, because now that I have gotten my family back, I have a new outlook on life. Going to war and then coming back and being close to my family has just been so rewarding. And then, of course, I do train dogs on the side, so that's just a whole new reward sensation that I get all in itself. Training a Marine is fun, teaching them how to shoot and kill, but Teaching a dog how to be loyal and affectionate is just, it's beautiful. It really is. I love it. Wouldn't change it for the world. I'm glad I joined the military when I did. I got to see a lot of different places, but I love life and where I'm at today, and I owe that to cannabis. I quit drinking when I came across cannabis, which is probably the best thing for my body.
How long ago was that? How long?
April 18th of this year, I actually quit drinking. But I had quit a couple of times before, and I actually went through some rehab in Norfolk, Virginia, thanks to the Navy. And quit drinking for a year and got a hold of it. And then I got out of the military, and I thought, that was my biggest reason for drinking was the military. So I thought I, of course, had a handle over it at that point once I left the military. But no, there's still stupid people everywhere that, upset me when I'm drinking. So the best decision after that was just ultimately quit drinking.
But the cannabis is what you thought helped? You didn't?
No, I truly believe that. I truly believe it has allowed me to kind of mature to that sense. I came across cannabis, and then, probably a year after coming across cannabis is when I decided to make that decision to quit drinking alcohol. It was really...
Well, I've heard this thousands of times. I mean, so I'm just... And Bob's over there shaking his head. We've seen this, folks. I mean, I don't want to interrupt Nick, except I do. I'm just here to support him and say, we've seen this and heard this thousands of times. That's why this cannonball run that we're all involved with, all of these guys are involved in this that are here, by the way. We're doing this to try and call attention to this kind of factor. We're saying that cannabis can get people off of pharmaceuticals, opiates, and alcohol. And Nick's sitting here next to me saying, "Yep, that's what I did." Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, certainly. And I even in the military had a couple of instances where I was on some type of heavy narcotic, for pain or something, to where I would quickly learned, well, you need to stop doing this. You probably shouldn't be snorting these pills. It really ultimately would take away the pain. It was the quickest way for, me to get that quick fix to take away the pain. But it was the same thing with the alcohol too. It was easy to drink at work. I was a functioning alcoholic. The worst medication that I was ever put on in the military would be, the antipsychotic meds that ultimately put me in a position in my life to where, people that really cared about me were like, whatever you were doing, whatever you were on, you need to stop because that's not you. You are not right in the head. And it was only at that point in time when I was like, wow, these pills that they've had me on for quite some time, about a month now, have really changed who I am and made me such a completely different person.
Can you remember any of what they were?
No.
Okay, that's all right. I was just curious.
I was, I was probably, after being in about 7 years is when I started to go through a divorce, and that's when I started to have problems with sleeping, and they just started throwing everything at me.
But these were pills that were prescribed to you while you're on active duty by Navy doctors, I assume.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. I just wanted people out there in the world, they really don't understand what the military is like, and even in our own country, they don't get it. But these are pills given to an active duty Marine to help him with problems created while on active duty. And he's in a bind in our country, and if you're in the Marine Corps or the Army or anything, because even if cannabis can help you, you can't have it if you're on active duty. They'll discharge you. They'll give you a bad conduct discharge. It's like having a felony. You walk around the rest of your life with a black cloud hanging over your head. And so they're in trouble. They got no choice. They take these pills. The pills make it worse. They try cannabis, he makes it better. They find out they try cannabis, they throw them out of the Marine Corps. It's a hell of a dirty cycle. I'm sorry, Nick.
No worries. I mean, you're completely right about that. I was fortunate enough to learn a lot of this stuff on my own, and to have close people point these things out too. But when I got out of the military, and I went to school to train dogs, it was when somebody told me at school, hey, you cannot treat this dog like it's a person, like a Marine. You should probably hit this and chill out. And I did, and I had the best night's sleep ever. I didn't wake up and toss and turn and I'd freak out in the middle of the night, and I probably overslept. And it was amazing that I could actually sleep like that. And that was an eye-opener. Not only did it calm me down, but it allowed me to sleep. And then it also started to take away some of the pain that I was having. It was just like, wow, I'm smart enough to pull the trigger. I think I'm smart enough to realize that this works. And it really does. And it's helped me grow up along the way since I've gotten out of the military. And like I said, I do thank cannabis for, if I have an addiction problem, let's call it that, but to stop drinking the poison that I relied on to cope with in the military that was legal for me, to turn to this plant that is just, it's amazing. I really do truly believe in it as a medicine.
And I was just going to add, you might be dependent on it then for it to help you with your life, but addiction, generally by a definition of addiction, would mean continued use of a drug despite the problems it causes. So that's addiction. That addiction's a nasty thing, but people are dependent on, diabetics get dependent on insulin. Somebody with a thyroid problem gets dependent on Synthroid. They need it to continue living. So you might be dependent on cannabis, but that's not a bad thing. Your endocannabinoid system has basically been attacked savagely. Anybody in combat. The purpose of the endocannabinoid system is to keep us in balance, and going to war certainly doesn't put anybody in any kind of balanced state. And so some soldiers come back and they just need to dull it, and in many ways that's why alcohol is a big one. It dulls the mind, dulls the pain, but it certainly doesn't help any problems, and down the road it just adds to them and makes them worse. Cannabis kind of works with your endocannabinoid system and puts you more in balance.
And it has made things better, certainly.
Well,
How about we do this? It's not a. Is it? You don't have TBI problems, do you?
I have. I hit my head in more ways than one, but
but not diagnosed with that. Well, let's talk about that. Anyway, I'm sort of getting more and more concerned about what I learned about TBI and what Professor Meshulam taught us yesterday. Sort of emphasizes to me that there's not enough people thinking like I'm thinking, and I know I'm thinking right when Dr. Meshulam's saying the same thing. And basically what he's saying is, through his experience with the Israeli military, his whole laboratory thing, that if somebody gets hit in the head and is administered cannabis quickly, the quicker the better. I mean, half an hour is great. Half a minute is wonderful. So the quicker the better is the point here, but it's so good and whenever you get it, the less chance that the head injury becomes serious or uncontrollable or whatever. So what I'd like to, the discussion I have here is maybe Mary Lynn can tell us the exact why. I know that it's because it's an anti-inflammatory, and I know that we can get it to the brain very quickly through various administrations. So is that all we really need to know about?
Well, again, the endocannabinoid system helps keep us in balance. A traumatic brain injury, whichever way, from weapons, people can get one in a car accident, from a fall off a tall building, whatever. You get in the head too many times or severely get a traumatic injury, and it's the swelling in the brain. So the anti-inflammatory aspects of cannabis are really helpful. Also neuroprotective. It's there to protect nerve cells and can actually help you regenerate nerve cells. So this is really important for people with traumatic brain injuries. And so right away the whole idea is to reduce the swelling, because a lot of the permanent damage from a head injury happens after the injury. It happens as the body's trying to repair it, and it overdoes a lot of things. The swelling causes permanent damage sometimes. So it's very useful in that. We found for other patients who've used it later, they've actually gotten some of their memory back. Again, TBI, depending on where you get hit in the head, what part of your brain is damaged. Some people suffer from seizures. Cannabis helps with the seizures. Some people suffer from loss of memory, severe loss of memory, and it can bring that back. And we're talking long-term memory, forgetting to the extent, maybe even forgetting who you are. So cannabis is very helpful for that. Again, it's just putting the body back in balance. Another thing they found out, it looks like if you can give cannabis immediately after combat, it might actually help for some people prevent the full-blown post-traumatic stress symptoms. So rather than many vets coming back from war, being troubled, maybe getting a little counseling, unfortunately getting the wrong type of prescription medications, the trauma is there with them. It's not going away. They're having a hard time dealing with it. Their endocannabinoid system has been overstressed, and cannabis can come in and just help that in many ways. But given it right away, it can actually maybe prevent all of the flashbacks, prevent the anxiety, the depression, the anger bursts, all the different things that can happen post-trauma.
Let me go back to TBI, though. Okay, it's an anti-inflammatory and it's a neuroprotectant. And everybody, when we talk about that, I don't know about everybody, but the vast majority, way up there in percentage, talk about it, and they think about soldiers and people like that, or maybe an automobile accident, violent crashes. And I'm going to make another point. Having been an athlete all the way through my college years, I played football, I played hockey, I played rugby. I've seen some head injuries. I've had a couple. And that's TBI. That's what traumatic brain injury. When you get cold cocked or your ears are ringing and when you open your eyes, all you see is white shit, stars flowing around and weird crap. You got a TBI. And I'm with Mary Lynn. That I wonder if in those days, instead of just being told to shake it off, somebody had handed me a joint, how it would have been better for me and everybody else. And then I'd like you to extrapolate that to what's going on today at every level of rough sport. Football for little kids, hockey, girls doing sports. And they got helmets on it. But I'm telling you, every time you get whacked, if you're heading a soccer ball, or if you're taking a puck in the forehead, you're getting a hell of a blow that needs cannabis. And I'm talking about all the way down to where we talked about earlier, to if it has to be under 1 year old that needs that treatment, then that baby should get it. So there's another controversial issue that I'd like to talk about. But you think about your child, how that child hits its head in sport, and think about how you might want to learn about how cannabis can help your child, and then maybe work for some rule changes to reduce that sort of injury.
Yeah, it'd be great to see some rule changes. What you might have heard in the news is about athletes, football players, others in their 30s having dementia problems, severe dementia. And it is from traumatic brain injuries, but what they call it is chronic traumatic encephalitis. They've been hit on the head so many times that it's literally caused some permanent brain damage, which leads to loss of memory. And it's really hard for these people to cope. We need to take a break, commercial break.
Are listening to the Time for Hemp Global Broadcasting Network. Please share us with your friends.
Serious Seeds is your source for quality cannabis and sativa seeds. Serious Seeds are the creators of legendary strains like AK-47, Bubblegum, Chronic, Cali Mist, and White Russian. The AK-47 is probably the most awarded strain on the planet. The high THC content of AK-47 makes it the perfect medical strain for patients seeking quick pain relief. Cali Mist is an almost pure sativa. Female medical cannabis patients have reported that this strain helps relieve menstrual cramps. Serious Seeds just acquired another Dutch high-quality seed bank, Magus Genetics. From now on, Serious Seeds can offer you even more award-winning strains. The fine folks at Serious Seeds strive to breed the best cannabis genetics that they can find, so patients can rely on the effectiveness of their medicine. Go to SeriousSeeds.com to grow your medicine. That site again is SeriousSeeds.com.
Well, I once had a bowl, good green reefer, big fat don't be much, much sweeter. Mighty don't hide it. Mighty don't hide it. Well, mighty don't hide it. Mighty don't hide it. Well, I don't hide it. Fire up right now.
Yeah, do fire up right now if you're dealing with all kinds of different types of medical issues, as we say in Indiana, issues that medical cannabis can assist you with. And pack your vaporizer, pack your bowls, pack your pipes, wrap up a joint, whatever it takes, puff on that thing and get yourself healthy. That certainly does help a lot of people get up and get going, have a better quality of life. With that said, we're passing the conversation back to my joint host here on the Big Joint Broadcast.
Thank you, Casper. Al Byrne back here, and we've just got about 5 minutes, folks. So let me just recap a little bit about where to get the information about Patients at a Time. First, you can go to medicalcannabis.com. You can get the same information at patientsatatime.org. I'd like to give you again I'd like to urge you again to watch The Scientist. It's an hour long. It's excellent. You can find it at thescientist.com. And then Patients at a Time in collaboration with SciTen Incorporation has also another website where medical doctors, nurses, pharmacists, other healthcare professionals can get online accredited information about the endocannabinoid system and the uses of medical cannabis. And that address would be themedicalcannabisinstitute.org. I'll repeat that, and you need the THE. Themedicalcannabisinstitute.org. That's online accredited courses. Docs, nurses, etc. They pay for each. There is a fee. It's very reasonable. Themedicalcannabisinstitute.org. Or you can go via medicalcannabis.com. Doesn't matter. And also, I'd like to remind you that as veterans, we expect that we would be taken care of when we came back from our various conflicts. I mean, the country sent us there, and we did what we were asked, and we're back, and we're not being taken care of. And that's what the Cannonball Run is all about. And you can find that on, you can go to Facebook. It's probably the easiest place, and look up the Cannonball. That's CANNA Ball Run for veterans. You can probably look that up again on Facebook. Cannonball Run for veterans. And I give you all kinds of information, as we spoke earlier, about why we want to have the option, no matter where we live as veterans, to use cannabis medically instead of the poisons that we think we are giving, which we and our brothers and sisters very much believe that for most of us are not particularly helpful and sometimes very deadly. 22 suicides a day is it's unacceptable. And until next week, time for Hemp, Healthy Mondays. This is Mary Lynn Mathre and Al Byrne for Patients at a Time. Take care.
And I want to remind people that we are a 24-hour day, 7-day a week, all broadcasting, all cannabis, all the time network. You can find us on iHeartRadio, Tumblr, and SoundCloud. Please share us with your friends. That's how we get found. All the information that is being shared by our host is so important for people to hear. I am so honored to be working shoulder to shoulder with such an amazing team. And that amazing team is dedicated to ending prohibition all around the world. And remember, the next time you hear me, you'll know that it's time for hemp.
Look at all that money, yeah, the money that they spent. Take another look and spend some time for hemp. Don't cut trees for paper, cause it hurts the environment. Stop deforestation, yes.
Education and information See what all the buzz is all about. It's time for hemp. It's time for hemp.
In this beloved country, you cannot legally buy alcohol unless you are at least 21 years old. The rules on exactly how and where and when you can buy alcohol and where you can legally consume it, those rules vary from state to state. But pretty much everywhere in the country, alcohol is taxed. Rules about advertising it and selling it are different than they are for non-alcoholic beverages. You can't have an open container of alcohol in a car. You cannot drive a car while under the influence of alcohol. Booze is legal in the United States of America, but there are rules. And the same goes for pot. Not everywhere, not even in most places, but as of today, officially in the state of Colorado, we now know the rules that state is setting up to regulate the legal use of marijuana by Colorado residents. In November, Colorado, along with Washington State, passed a statewide ballot measure to legalize pot, to amend the state constitution to allow for the regulation of pot to be more like alcohol and less like what it is everywhere, an illegal drug that can send you to prison if you get caught using or selling it. The Colorado measure passed by more than 10 points, and even though the state's Democratic governor did not support the measure, it did pass by a lot, and now Governor Hickenlooper has signed into law the legal framework for how Colorado wants to handle legal pot smoking in that state. So here's the basics of what they've decided. First, you have to be 21 years old. Colorado residents over age 21 will legally be allowed to possess up to an ounce of pot. If you want to sell pot, you will have to be licensed by the state. Sellers have to verify that a person they're selling to is a Colorado resident. If the person they're selling to is not a Colorado resident, you can still sell to them, but you're limited in how much you can sell. You can only sell them a quarter ounce of pot. Pot sellers have to allow the state to lab test the product that they are selling. No, you cannot sell pot brownies or other pot-infused food alongside other normal food in your restaurant. And if you do sell pot-infused food, it has to be to go and not for here for some reason. No business selling pot can be within 1,000 feet of schools or drug treatment centers or child care facilities. There's going to be a new state limit for THC in your system, the active ingredient in pot. The new state limit for that in your system for assessing whether or not you are driving while stoned. And that standard will coexist alongside the blood alcohol level that's used to assess whether you are driving while drunk. Pot will come in containers that are child resistant, and the labels have to tell you how potent that pot is. Also, this is kind of a weird one. Magazines that are about the pleasures and wonders of smoking pot, magazines like High Times or whatever, they will now have to be kept behind the counter and out of sight, the way that porn is. And that thing about the magazines is honestly kind of weird. But you know what? A lot of states have weird laws about booze, too. It's kind of the nature of the beast. In Utah, right, bartenders have to pour cocktails behind a curtain. People are weird about prohibition stuff. But, of course, the big kahuna in all of this in Colorado is the tax issue. If pot is going to be legal in Colorado, then pot, like alcohol, like cigarettes, like lots of things that the state doesn't necessarily endorse you using but recognizes that you can, marijuana as a legal product in Colorado is going to be taxed up the wazoo. The normal Colorado state sales tax is 2.9%. But the plan in Colorado now is that the sales of pot in the state are not going to be taxed at 2.9%. They're going to be taxed at a 10% sales tax. And on top of that 10% sales tax, they're also going to add, or they want to add at least, a 15% excise tax on top of the sales tax. And on top of that, local cities and towns can then decide if they want to add their own taxes on as well. So it's going to raise a lot of money. The first $40 million in revenue raised on pot in Colorado is slated to pay for school construction. That was in the ballot measure that everybody voted for in November. Beyond that, the revenue is also slated to pay for enforcing these new pot regulations and for new educational efforts to let kids know that smoking pot makes you boring. Presumably the educational effort from the state will be a little more broad than that, but maybe that is where they will start. The idea of regulating and taxing marijuana the way we do for alcohol has been a hypothetical discussion for so long now that it's almost hard to believe that it is coming true. But it is coming true in Colorado, with one major caveat. Pot is still illegal federally, no matter what happens in that state or any state. Look, there it is in the Controlled Substances Act in federal law. It's actually listed right between LSD and mescaline. And marijuana has been listed there for so long, they spell it Mary H instead of Mary J. Marijuana. Colorado is moving ahead with not just the theory, but the practice of treating pot as a legal drug like alcohol. Colorado is going ahead. But as you can see here, the federal government is not going ahead. So what happens next here?
Education and information. see what all the buzz is all about. It's time for hemp. It's time for hemp.